some years ago, we were selected twice in a row as Europe's best workplace, and due to that, I ended up in about 200 seminars like this in a year, by the way, to talk about our culture. And about 100 times I was asked how we could have a culture like you, what could we do? And about 100 times I answered quite easily, change your owners, change your board, change your CEO, top management, middle management, and good part of your staff. And I actually really believed in that until our customers, a few of them who had been building digital services and helping them on their strategies and so on, asked if we could really help them to try out if you could, change our culture and so on. And that's what we went on doing, and really fastly actually found out that you actually really can change the culture. It might be still easier to change the owners and so on, but still you can make the change. You can make it happen, and nowadays it's actually a good part of our business altogether. There's about 20 plus in Helsinki, us helping quite big customers from banks to different type of financing institution, energy companies, telecom and so on renewing their culture. And the interesting part is that if you look at the machinery business, for example, where we work quite a lot as well, it's totally the same problems everywhere. It really doesn't. The field of business doesn't play any role in it. The big question is why. Of course, you need the new culture. And if you look at for example, the finance sector, which in a way went the digital disruption already once in a really big manner. And in a way has been a forerunner in the whole making new stuff happen. You can still say that the world will never change as slowly as it's changing now, which basically means that the only way we can, get to the pace we need is to make sure that we have an organization that's able to adapt and learn new stuff and wants to take things forward. Which basically, in a way, we need an innovative organization. No one word is good enough, but that's quite close for it. Typically, this is done in really many companies so that we have these accelerators or innovation hubs, or we have this one really good service design team where we have a lot of people from, a lot of young people typically, by the way. Or then the companies are using contractors like us or so on. But the problem is that if you have all the eggs in one place, you really won't get stuff done, at least on the big scale. What you need is that you actually need to have the whole organization trying out stuff and learning based on that. And this is especially true now that as the world is getting smaller and smaller, we need to make sure that we change our point of view from looking inwards to looking outwards. The longer the organization exists, the faster it starts to look on our own processes and forgets the customer needs and so on. And this has a number of implications. One of them, if you look at the basic way of drawing an organization, you have the top management up, and then you have the people doing the actual work here, and then you have the customers down there. The problem is if you want to be customer-centric, that the higher up you go in the organization, and in a traditional way, that's where you go with the bigger decisions, the further away you actually are from the customers, the further away you are from the customer information and being able to be customer-centric. A way better way of drawing this is actually if you make it a circle, so that you still have the management in the middle and all of your customers on the outside, where you can see the customer journey that the customers are doing in your company on the ring. That you have, you have the marketing where you're trying to get new people in, and then you have all the other functions there, and then you have the people serving the customers on their journey throughout your whole business, and then you have the management layer making sure that these people can do their job as well as possible, and then you have the top management in the middle. Who of you know about the Simon Sinek's why, what, how? A good number of hands. Those who you didn't, just Google and watch some TED presentation of him, starting to repeat himself, but the message is really good. There, the basic idea is that you have the why, which is the role of the top management to say why we are here, what we are trying to do, and then you have the what for the middle management and management, and then you need to leave the how to the people who are close to the customers, so that they can be customer-centric, they can learn from the customers and so on. But then there's problems, and the most typical problem is that the organization is built with these silos in there, that you have different type of silos. You have the customer support or sales or that kind of business silo and so on, which basically means that you're actually breaking up the whole customer journey with your own organization model. And then you are making a second problem, which is that these people are not talking to each other, as there's typically barriers in the between. The people might not even have access rights to walk in the part of the building where the other group is, or something like that. They, in really many cases, really physical barriers. And what we believe in strongly is that you need to have this, to have a future-proof organizations. You have to have these teams which are really customer-centric, that really tries out new stuff. They're iterative and they try to learn as fast as possible. They carry the responsibility. And with the responsibility, by the way, comes the power of making decisions as well. And for them to make good decisions, you have to have information flowing really openly in the organizations. And then we believe in these multidisciplinary teams that have people from different parts of the organizations, different parts of the customer journey in one single team. With that up and running, you actually get really good answers really fast. But for the team to work together, they need a common language. They need they need to somehow be able to work in new manners together, as they're not used to do it. And there we've been using this lean service creation method that we originally made for ourselves and ended up open sourcing it, and now you can take in this university or a good number of other universities courses on it and so on. But we've been using that to help our customers to learn the new ways of working, which in a really nutshell is that let's focus on finding problems worth solving. Let's get out of the building, go and ask a lot of whys to really understand what's happening, and then simply just start building something, measure it how it works, learn based on that what to build next, and use that cycle. And the really fun part here is that You can see the change in people on the beginning of the second workshop day. They are really into the new way of working. You can see it in their eyes that they are glowing and they finally understand their customer needs and they have a feeling that they have ownership in their work and so on. And they are talking that they never ever want to do anything differently. And they are getting stuff done in a few weeks that typically would have taken them a year or 2 years or they actually don't believe that they would ever have gotten it done and so on. And we run this kind of setups with our customers for some time and then found out that after we left the building, the customers started to describe this brick wall. And they described it everybody in the same way, that it's a wall that you need to, I'm banging my head to the wall and I really don't know if I'll just stop trying out new stuff or will I just, quit the company and could you, by the way, futurize, do you have any openings and so on, which is really not nice when the customers are, trying to get, it looks really bad to the customers that we are recruiting their people, and typically their best people, and so on. And the brick wall was all about management, basically on 2 levels. How they do resourcing in the company and what leadership means there. The resourcing part, the basic problem is that the bigger the company is, the tendency is greater for them to think that we can take one person and slice his work results in a good number of projects. Typically, people have 10 plus projects that they are simultaneously running. And typically in the organizations, it's actually a really good thing that you have many projects running. You're regarded as really productive as you're part of this and that and that and that and that and that project. The problem just is that the basic idea is that when you have these people from in the project and everybody is doing some other projects as well, you are still counting that, hey, we have a 5-person team here as we have 5 persons here. But the problem is, it's not adding the numbers up. It's actually multiplying them. And when you have small people who don't have time to do the project, you end up in a situation where you're just using all your time in having these status meetings where you're discussing what we didn't get done last week and what should we be trying to do next week. And then you have go around and around, and then you're just wondering why doesn't anything proceed. And the problem is that you just can't slice the time up. Every single study shows that you get more done if you just focus on one thing and do it that well and then move to another. And when you talk about this to the management, the typical answer is that we just can't do anything about it. This is just life. We just can't do anything about it. We need all of these projects and so on. And I personally have never ever understood that. So you can afford to have all of these projects not proceeding at all, instead of having one going really fast and then focus on the next one and the next one and the next one. It's just leadership. You just make the decision and move forward. And it might be painful for a couple of weeks, but that's life. And the second problem is, one of our customers described this with these words in an event a couple of weeks ago. He talked about this, the Empire Strikes Back effect. And he meant that in the beginning, when the company is trying out the new ways of working, the manager who initiated the whole new way, he's getting the glory about the new stuff happening, and he feels being in control of what's happening and so on. And then finally, he actually starts to find out that, well, actually, a lot of the stuff that I used to do, the team is now doing without me. They don't actually need me to make the decisions that I used to do. And you know, that feels bad. You are not that needed anymore. And you end up in a situation where you're basically waiting for the team to make a mistake. And there's mistakes happening all the time, of course. Then if there wouldn't be anything new happening there. And when the team makes the mistake, the manager goes in and says, okay, this is so critical that we need to get back to the old ways of working, and from now on you answer to me, and it's, you know, slice up the work just as it used to be, and then the whole team is really unhappy, and they apply to other jobs, and life isn't good, and the world is ending, and so on. And this is all about the problem that the leadership, with really big quotation marks, used to mean in a way that, hey, I'm a good leader and a big leader, I make a lot of big decisions and I have a lot of control and so on. And nowadays it's more about showing the direction and enabling others. And the problem here is that you actually need to, as a manager, you need to, and moving forward to a new culture, you need to give away first. And then the reward comes later. For example, compared to the team starting to work in a new way, they get the reward instantly. And that's of course way better way of learning stuff. But here, for the managers, the feedback gets later in, and you need to, you know, take the time for it. And basically, if you want to make the change happen, you need to start practicing. This applies to bosses as well. There's this weird setup that we believe that as we are so good as we are on this position in the organization, that just reading a book and being in a seminar like this means that, hey, now I know this stuff, so I can apply it. But that's not what's happening. You can't apply something directly that you just know. You need to practice it and get the feedback, and again, again, again. And especially, it's not about changing, you know, them, the team, or the organization. It's changing me, myself, and I. How do you think? How many times do you think we've gotten a request for help in the organization where the wordings would have somehow applied that I need to change as manager as well? We've done some hundreds of this kind of projects. Yes, 0. Not a single time the person buying us in has been thinking that actually the change needs to start from me. And that's luckily something that we nowadays know to start the whole sales meeting, that, hey, actually it will be about changing you, and the team is, you know, just the side story here. But I think it's quite interesting. The good part is that changing is fun, and the path is joyful, and we have perhaps time for a few questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Hanno. I liked very much this reward comes later. It is so often in all sectors of life the same thing. You must just wait. Any questions? While you are thinking of questions, I have one. You asked me that who is the audience? Is it students? Is it people who have been working for 10 years, 20 years? What would you say when you are talking to students, or when you are talking and trying to convince people who have been working for 30 years, is the message the same, or the difficulties the same, or what would you say?
One of the learnings that I personally had, I actually really believe that as we had been recruiting a lot of young people. The average age is in the company is 30, and getting a lot of from the universities and so on. I actually really believe that this kind of working is tied to being a hipster and Generation X and stuff like that. Until in the very first change program, there were actually a couple of people who were just retiring. And there was no correlation of on the adaptation, on the age, and so on. But the problem with all of you young people is that you are regarded as most of you young people is that currently many of the organizations who have figured out that they need a new culture, they're hiring you there with the idea that, hey, just having you there will change everything. And if they don't understand that they need to change themselves first, then nothing is going to change. And somehow you need to if you want to make your work life, meaningful and so on, you need to be able to communicate this somehow to the management. And not, or then select the workplace according to the fact that do they seem to understand this or not. Because if you are regarded as the silver bullet of change, then it won't be a fun ride and you won't last for a year.
Thank you. One comment to this. I always try to ask from my students that how do they think when they know how to share things? Because I don't. And until now, I keep on asking that, and students try to explain me, but even if I would like to understand, I don't understand. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, a very nice presentation, thank you. I'm just curious about one fact that you showed at the beginning, saying that you have been recognized twice as the best place to work in, but that last recognition was 5 years ago. What has it happened in these last years?
We haven't been measuring ourselves afterwards. When you've won everything that you can win, then it's scary to attend anymore, as you can only lose. This is so wide question, I really don't know what to answer. We're definitely a better workplace now than we used to be when we were measured the last time.
Why?
We've been, there's 5 years in between, and there's the 360 days, and all of those days we've per year been developing ourselves to be better. We've been measuring ourselves. We do daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, constant chat measuring, and so on. There's this many different type of ways we measure ourselves constantly to make sure that we are making ourselves better and getting rid of the old but nice ways of working that used to work well, that the old founders still love, or something like that.
Thank you. Time for one very short question. Yes, there. Oscar.
Thank you. You have talked about changing the culture, but also from my, observance, when I worked in a bank for a year, the way they are organized also is evident from the way their information systems are set up. So in order to, change the teams into different, smaller, agile, multidisciplinary ones, you would also have to adapt the whole infrastructure of the organization, and that requires a huge investment. So my question is, how do you deal with pushing this change?
Our approach has been always that let's start small, scale it up, focus on the people first, get to their organization models later. In some of the organizations, there might be some personal KPIs that actually really prevent of doing something new, and you need to tackle those first. But typically, you actually don't. You can get the change up and running, and people wanting to have it, without going to the whole, PowerPoint organization modeling and so on, where you really lose yourself quite fast. But you can try with small teams and see how it works and make that visible and start growing it based on that. And of course, the bigger the organization is, the longer it will take. But we believe in doing it small so that you can really adapt to the, because it's not bringing the culture that I described here to the company. It's making sure that the company adapts the best parts of that to their setup and takes that forward. And that takes time and iterations and so on. A hard question, actually.